Ladies and gentlemen, welcome along to the State of Scottish Football. It is the Friday episode, and what an opening week it has been for this new show on the channel. Sean, you've been hosting a couple of the shows, and we have now averaged over 1,000 viewers per show. We couldn't have asked for a better start.
No, it's been amazing and so good to talk about football across Scotland, teams in Europe, transfers, start changing it up every day. So we've got a great team of contributors to talk it all through. So yeah, massively proud of how we've started, and hopefully it's just the up from here.
And speaking about how we've started, we will be previewing the opening round of fixtures in the Cinch Premier League this weekend. We'll also be discussing that retro top that Sean's wearing, as it's the first Ayrshire derby. And how long has it been?
4 years.
4 years. So it's an exciting one down Ayrshire way. We'll also be looking at our main headline this evening, which is, can Aberdeen or Hibs come between Celtic and Rangers in the top three? So a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us today. We're live on Facebook, on YouTube and on Twitter. Do get involved, give us your comments, give us your predictions on how you think the season will go ahead. If you've got time at the end, then I'll push Sean for his predictions on the Premier League. We know who he thinks is going to win the championship, so there's no point in covering that. Yeah. Let's get started though. It has been 67 days since the game between Dundee and Kilmarnock, the one that unfortunately sent Kilmarnock down to the championship. Sean, we'll brush over that. But 67 days since then, and tomorrow is the start of the Scottish Premier League season. First of all, Sean, it's like a kid before on Christmas Eve. It's an exciting time in football. It's good to get the league season back underway.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that there's 4 live games on the telly this week, I think this weekend is amazing if you include Monday's Ayrshire derby. So it's so good to see our game being showcased, and there's so many storylines going into this season. There's always plenty of drama in Scottish football. That's why we're here to talk about it every single weekday. So it's massively, massively exciting. It's maybe not that same exciting for me because my team don't play till Monday, but I think that regardless, just knowing that there's going to be Scottish football, league football again to get stuck into is really, really exciting.
And we've got contributions coming in already. Graham Caldwell coming in to say the show's been excellent this week, guys. Very informative with a wide range of topics. So thank you very much for that, Graham. Obviously, we are live Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. till 7, covering the state of Scottish football. And let's start with the Cinch Premier League. And the first game of the season is the opener. It's between last year's champions Rangers and Livingston. It's live on Sky Sports with a 1:30 kickoff. Now, one of the things I want to touch on across all of these games is the fact that we're getting into this season and we've got the fans back. It's not 100% yet, well, not for some grounds, but we've got fans back. 23,000 will be in there as Rangers unfurl the championship flag, Sean. It's just great to see fans getting back into the ground.
Yeah, so good. I was lucky to have Scottish football last season. I think we all were, to see it how we could. But I think to have fans back, the passion that Scottish fans bring to games is just so vital, and we know how much passion they put into it across the leagues and across the divisions. So to have them back, and decent numbers as well. I mean, it's great that it's not just sort of been left at this cap of 2,000, that you can apply for more. And I think there's room that there should have been more in certain grounds. And like some people can feel aggrieved that they're not getting to a game this weekend, but just the fact that it's a really good start, and fingers crossed in just over a week that as it stands they should be full again, and I really hope that does come true, because to see fans in stadiums, when I was heading to Rugby Park to cover the game last week with Morton, just seeing fans walking to Rugby Park in their blue and white stripes was generally quite like an emotional experience. I know you've been back to Parkhead as well, and just seeing people sort of converging on the place that they're used to doing it all the time at the weekend just made such a massive difference and put a really big smile on my face.
Yeah, definitely. Just getting back to what is it's so important for football fans. It's like the sanctuary. It's their home. Although they stay at a home, the football ground is their home. You see them there every Saturday. They're there with their pies and their bovrils. They're there with their programmes. They've got their favourite chants. They've got their favourite scarf. They've got their lucky scarf, lucky hats. And just getting back into this routine of being able to go back to the games again is fantastic. And it's great that we're in this position now. And as you said, hopefully, fingers crossed, in a couple of weeks' time, we'll see stadiums open to 100% capacity. It won't be, unfortunately, for the first opening round of fixtures. As you said, 23,000 anticipated to be at Ibrox. What are you thinking ahead of this one, Sean? Rangers have been fairly quiet in the transfer market, but they didn't really need to strengthen after an impressive season last year. Fashion Sakala really and John Lundstrom, their two main signings. What are you thinking ahead of this one? Livingston coming in with a whole new team, basically.
Yeah, and so that's hard to sort of know how Livingston are going to fare, but I think that I do kind of worry for them heading into this new season. They were on that amazing run. What was it? 13 games unbeaten, like basically beating or remaining unbeaten against every team in the Premiership, which is just ridiculous, really, for Livy. And I caught quite a bit of them covering their games during that run, and I generally did think they were going to keep it going. Obviously not unbeaten, but I thought that they could maintain that kind of form and the performances they had to get themselves into a European spot. And obviously, if you take out that sort of really good spell, either side of that, it was a pretty dreadful season for Livingston, actually. It was that great run that really saved them from not being in a bit of trouble and somehow managed to propel them to 6 just by being such a good run. And of course, Rangers were fantastic, imperious at home in the league. So you would expect it to be a fairly comfortable day for the champions. But you never know. The first day of the season could be a bit of rust. And how will they incorporate those new signings? Will it be the same sort of players as last season? Morelos hasn't featured too much in pre-season so far. Roof's been struggling with an injury, so who do you go with up front? Is it Itten? Is it Defoe? Do you try and play new signing Sakala through the middle, who by all accounts had a very good game against Real Madrid in that friendly? So questions going into the game, but you would expect that, especially in front of a very big crowd at Ibrox, that Rangers will be determined to have a good start to their campaign.
Yeah, definitely. That was an impressive victory for Rangers over Real Madrid. It's the first time a Scottish team has beaten Real Madrid since Aberdeen in the Cup Winners' Cup, that famous final. Two players I want to touch on here for Livingston, though, and I just want to highlight that going forward on these Friday shows, we're hoping to bring in clips. We are live on the Livingston, the Hibs, the Celtic, and I think it might be the Kilmarnock press conferences through the week. So ahead of the games, we'll be bringing you the insights from the managers. But one of two of the signings I want to talk about are two players that are coming back into the league with Livingston. One of them being Bruce Anderson, the former Aberdeen striker, and the second one, Andrew Shinnie, the former Rangers player. What can these two players bring into a Livingston side, which, as you said, towards the latter half of last season, really did struggle, and on form, they were relegation bound?
Yeah, I think something that kind of coincided, maybe not exactly, with Livingston's sort of tail off, was when it was apparent that Scott Robinson wasn't going to sign a contract extension at Livingston. He was at the time linked to Motherwell. He did such a good job in that forward area of being just a massive pest up front. I mean, he's not the most sort of refined technically of players. I mean, and it used to be a central midfielder as well, so playing up front, he's not the biggest of guys, but he's just an absolute pest up there, can get in behind, will sort of just nip at the heels of defenders. And I think they lost that a bit and when they switched over to J. Emmanuel Thomas, who I like actually. I just think it kind of changed the dynamic of that Livingston side. So I think forward areas was somewhere they needed to improve. Andrew Shinnie's a bit more of an unknown commodity considering he's been away for a while. He hasn't been in the Scottish game, but of course he has international experience, albeit not too much, but was obviously a very highly thought of player when he was last up here. And Bruce Anderson's one who I liked at Accies. I looked for a spell that he could be the difference in dragging them out of that relegation battle. Good hold-up play for a man of his size, and was just never really got the opportunity at Aberdeen, despite the fact that they've struggled for sort of prolific goal scorers since Adam Rooney left them. So
definitely,
he's still young, Bruce Anderson. I'm not saying that he's going to be the finished article straight away in this Livingston side, but I think that he's the one I'm a wee bit more interested in. I would like to see him get a run in that side and sort of see what he can do for a run of games, because even at Accies he ended up out the squad a bit in the relegation run-in. So a good run of games and we can see what Bruce Anderson can bring to Almonville.
I'm going to put it out there. I reckon if you can get Andrew Shinnie up to the form that he's capable of, he could be one of the best signings in the league this year. Livingston seem to do this. They seem to drag players that are on a bad run of form turn their careers round and get them big moves. Look at J. Emmanuel Thomas last year, coming into the league again, a guy that had been completely written off. Now he's up playing for Aberdeen. I think Shinnie's got the chance to do that as well. And Livingston, they're one of those sides, they're very difficult to play at home because of the surface, which let's not talk about that because plastic surfaces are one of my absolute bugbears. But the Livingston side always seems to be very compact, very hard to break down, and very difficult to score against, even if they're not playing well. But adding these dynamics up front and Shinnie and Anderson, they're looking to now become a team that, when they're on the ball, you're fearful when they're coming at you.
Yeah, and that's what they did best in that run last season, that when they were on the ball as well, you felt that they could do something. Nicky Devlin was a great outlet from right back, and same as Kieran Brown, who was on loan from Cardiff City. The fullbacks pushed high, and it made a really big difference. I thought that midfield pivot didn't get enough sort of praise of Marvin Bartley, who was great at breaking up the play, and then Jason Holt would dictate it. Obviously, he's a player who's got plenty of pedigree in the Scottish game as well. And then in the forward areas, it was Scott Pittman and Scott Robinson, who I think are two very underrated players who would just sort of nip in behind and make a nuisance of themselves. And I thought that it kind of tailed off and Livingston sort of retreated back to their more defensive ways. So at Ibrox, I definitely expect them to be compact, like you're saying. But in those games at Almonville, I think they are best when they take the game to the opposition on that small pitch, on that surface. It's never a nice place to go, as you said, and just really sort of make the opposition aware of that they're in for a fight. And I think that's when Livy are at their best. It sort of carries on for their manager, Martindale, who's a great character, but he's a real fighter himself. So if he can get that spirit into his players as much as he can this season, then maybe they can sort of beat the fight for the drop again. But I've got a sneaky feeling they're going to be in that conversation for one of the relegation places.
So it is prediction time ahead of the league opener. Sean, I'm going to go with 3-0 to Rangers.
I'll have to go different from you then. I'll say that they'll be a wee bit slow at the traps on the first day of the champions. So I'll say 2-0 Rangers.
So both of us going for a home victory. Let's do this in the way that Sportscene's probably going to put the highlights out. And we'll jump ahead to the evening kickoff on Saturday night. It is Ange Postecoglou's first league match in the SPFL. Celtic versus Hearts at Tynecastle. Again, 5,300 anticipated to be there on Saturday night. An 8 o'clock kickoff. First of all, let's hope these 8 o'clock kickoffs, when the fans are back, I hope they're here to stay.
It would be class. I think we spoke about it on one of the episodes of the State Scottish Football earlier this week, that I've got a sneaky feeling that it's because there's no Premier League football on at the moment. I imagine Sky will make that their priority when it rolls back around the game, because there's 3 games on the telly this week, but I'm sure that in March there'll be 3 games in the entire month when they get a bit disinterested. So hopefully I'm wrong, but I think that this 8 o'clock kickoff is just because there's a little bit of freedom in the schedule at the moment. But I mean, if fans are all there, a wee trip through to Edinburgh, or for Hearts fans to be sort of just kicking about Gorgie, have a few drinks before 8 o'clock kickoff under the lights at Tynecastle, you can't really ask for much better than that. Hearts Celtic 8 o'clock Saturday night. I don't know if it would have happened if there was enough fans.
That's true.
Probably would have had to think about that logistically, but for what it is, I'm really looking forward to that game. It's probably the game I'm looking forward to most in the Premiership this weekend, actually.
Yeah, if the fans that are lucky enough to get a ticket to go to Tynecastle on Saturday, I hope you do enjoy it. Look, as you said, if there was 16,000 in at Tynecastle, there was no chance this game's going to be given the go-ahead for an 8 o'clock kick-off. But I'd rather have an 8 o'clock kick-off on a Saturday night as opposed to having to travel to Aberdeen for 12:30 on a Saturday or a Sunday. Or even, we looked at the Betfred Cup, I think Aberdeen have got to travel down. Sorry, not the Betfred Cup, the Premier Sports Cup. They've got to travel down for a 12 o'clock kick-off on a Saturday afternoon. That's ridiculous. I'll take the later kick-offs over that. Thank you very much. But Hearts recently promoted back into the Premier League, and when you look at it, they have the chance here to sort of get the points on the board very early against a Celtic side who struggled through the week in the Champions League, and at the minute, and I have to say this even as a Celtic fan, look very vulnerable at the back, especially with that young back four. Hearts will go into this with thinking that if they get the chance, then they could really put Celtic on the back foot.
Yeah, I think they'll be thinking that this is the most vulnerable Celtic will be in a long time coming to Tynecastle. and they'll know that they want to get their season off to a good start, and this could be their opportunity to do it. Should Carl Starfelt be in the team this week, or at least in the squad for
Yes, he's going to be involved on Saturday night. Yeah,
you think
there's also
that showed up Celtic a bit, wouldn't you?
Well, hopefully, yeah. I'd like to see what Carl Starfelt can do. Do you know, Carl is the worst name for any Scottish person to try and pronounce.
Isn't it? Carl Starfelt.
There's also talk that Kyogo Furuhashi, Celtic's new number 8, will also be involved in that game as well. So, be interesting to see if he's maybe even on the bench.
I mean, I'm massively interested to watch this Celtic team. I wasn't very impressed in that game during the week, but I like what Ange Postecoglou said about his principles of football, and I'm intrigued by some of these new signings because they're all sort of kind of left field. We don't know how they're going to do. We haven't really seen much of them before, but they come sort of highly touted. So what does that mean for them in the Celtic team? So I'm excited to watch Celtic this season. I don't know what's going to happen. It could be a success. It could be a catastrophe. They do definitely need to shore up that defence because the fact that was their back five in a Champions League qualifier was pretty disgraceful, I think, on Wednesday, wasn't it? And
yeah, Wednesday.
Hearts with Liam Boyce and Gary Mackay-Steven, who's looked fantastic in the Premier Sports Cup. He was disappointing for me in the Championship. I thought a player of his quality should have been sort of really running at defenders in the Championship, beating them, getting balls into the box, making things happen. And he just played it really safe, I thought. He wasn't dynamic enough at all in Maroon last season, but he's looked a lot better and scored some goals as well. Liam Boyce has been fantastic last season and sort of carried on to this season. So Hearts definitely have options in forward areas, and if Celtic aren't there defensively, could definitely sort of make a mark on them.
I'm interested to see if Hearts play the big French striker whose surname I just cannot pronounce. So I'm not. That's the guy. I wasn't even going to try and attempt that. Thanks, Sean. But he looks to be a big handful up front, and considering you've got a young, inexperienced Celtic defence and Carl Starfelt coming in for what will be hopefully his first start, you'd think that would be someone that they'd try and target, get the ball up to him, play off of him, very similarly to the way that they used to do with the likes of Lafferty and I'm trying to think of the other big guy they used to have up front, Ikpeazu.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hearts going to be hoping that Nanduli has a little bit more sort of quality than Ikpeazu. I mean, Ikpeazu
that's true.
Games, actually. And who did he just get? He just got a championship move. It was to Borough, I think. And
yes.
He managed to steal the championship after Wickham getting relegated, which surprised a lot of my Hearts supporting pals. It depends what Hearts do, I think, formation-wise. Their preferred formation seems to be 4-3-3. And if that's the case, you'd expect Liam Boyce to be there. But against Cali Thistle in the final round of the Premier Sports Cup, Liam Boyce dropped into midfield, which was quite an interesting move from Robbie Neilson. It's interesting to see if they continue with that. But if it is just a one up front, you'd think he'd stick with Liam Boyce because he's shown over a long period of time in Scottish football just how deadly he can be. He was the main man last season. And maybe Nanduli is one of those ones who can come off the bench and sort of impose himself on the game as those young centre-backs perhaps start to tire.
I mean, it's just a surprise for me that Robbie Neilson didn't leave Hearts and go and take another championship team, because that's the way he seems to go in his management career. But let's look at this then. So Celtic obviously hoping to have Starfelt in there, maybe having Furuhashi. The options up front, it'll either be Edouard or Ajeti. I think personally I would like to see Ajeti start in that game. I think Edward's already kind of working his ticket out of Celtic Park. This will be a very difficult start for Ange Postecoglou. If you could have offered him any game for his first Premier League game, I'd imagine the two that he wouldn't have said would have been away at Ibrox or away at Tynecastle. And this is a very difficult start, but anything can happen. And I'm going to be quietly optimistic that Celtic will be able to get something out of this game. I think the fact that it's not a full house in at Tynecastle might make the difference there. And I'm going to be cheeky and sneak a 2-1. 2-1 Celtic.
I see goals in this game as well. I'm not sure about either of them defensively. And I'm going to say that Hearts are going to nick a point in this one. I'm going to say 2-2.
Do you know, I generally wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't. I think back to an opening day about 10, 15 years ago. Celtic played Motherwell and were 4-2 up with only about 5-10 minutes to go. Motherwell scored 2 late goals to make it 4 each. Something like that is completely possible on Saturday night. But what that does suggest, though, is if there is goals, it will be great entertainment and a great advert for Scottish football. So tune in, 8 o'clock on Sky for that one. Now, you can see the banner going across the screen or on the screen here. Can Aberdeen or Hibs come between Celtic and Rangers in the top three this season? Sean, I'm just going to ask you that question. Do you think there's a chance for either of those two to stake a place for second spot? And second spot qualifies you for the Champions League.
I think there's a chance. I mean, it's hard to see. We don't know what's going to play out with. I mean, Rangers are going to win the league. I think for me that's a pretty cut and dry prediction.
All right.
Sorry,
That's
pretty easily said for me. So I think if you're looking for somebody to drop out the top two, it's going to be Celtic. I still would back Celtic. I think they should have enough. And I think I'll sort of lean towards a positive view of Postecoglou and what the job he might do. Of course, he needs to be backed, and whether he's backed or not might affect the answer to this question. But I think that I expect Aberdeen and Hibs to both be better than they were last season. I think that Jack Ross has imposed his ideas on that team. He's quite a pragmatic manager, plays to the opposition. I think that sometimes holds Hibs back. I think that the quality they have compared to the rest of the league, they should be trying to just impose their game on the opposition. But I think he's made some good signings this window. I like Daniel Mackay, who scored last night in the Conference League. I think that's a good addition from Inverness. But I think Aberdeen might be the favourites to do it. Stephen Glass, I think they made the right decision in getting rid of Derek McInnes when they did, and having a manager in mind and bedding him in over the season, and not just waiting until the summer to get him in so the manager could identify what they wanted. It sounds like a good idea, doesn't it?
Are you trying to have a wee dig here, Sean? We could fall out here on a Friday.
Why would I do that to you? No, but I think that's smart. I think that doing that, so Stephen Glass can look at his squad and say, this is what I'd like, this is what I don't like, this is where we need to improve, has paid off for Aberdeen. And they're playing good football, which is quite mental for Aberdeen. It hasn't been the case for a long time, but they're sort of tactically astute now. They're knocking the ball about, they're pressing high. And that's what's frustrated fans so much. And that's what pundits said to Aberdeen fans when they were complaining about it is, well, you've been a success. You've been comfortably the third best team in Scotland for a while now. And they were like, well, I'm sick of watching this rubbish football. And that's certainly not the case with Stephen Glass. And then your addition, Scott Brown, Declan Gallagher, look very strong as well. And then forward areas, Ramirez and J. Emmanuel Thomas, who I'm not sure exactly the answer to their forward options, but time will tell on that one. But I fancy Aberdeen to be pretty strong this season. If they can keep hold of the likes of Lewis Ferguson, I think that will make a massive difference. So if there was going to be a team to jump up into second, I would say it's Aberdeen. I would say it's at the expense of Celtic, but I would still predict that it will be the two Glasgow sides as the top two this season.
So I'm going to touch on 2 points of what you just said. The thing about Postecoglou, I'm excited about Postecoglou, but what I'm also excited about is Postecoglou's press conferences, because they are absolutely superb. Anyone who hasn't seen today's yet, he was asked a question on whether he knew or had done any homework on Hearts, and his answer was, "Listen, mate, I don't come from outer space. I know who Hearts are. They've got a big Australian connection." He named off Ryan McGowan and a couple of other players that came from Australia that played for Hearts. He's like, we know who Hearts are. I love his quick-witted responses, and they'll do him the world of good trying to institute himself within Scottish football. Secondly, the point I wanted to make was on Aberdeen and on Stephen Glass. Now, when Stephen Glass came in, you talked about him coming in and embedding himself. I remember listening to the Aberdeen fans only a couple of games in, and they're like, we've made a mistake here. Now that he's had the chance to come in, bring in his signings, and some of them have been fantastic. I think Scott Brown is one of the most astute signings that he can make. A lot of people have written off Scott Brown, but I think him being in that midfield alongside Lewis Ferguson, even giving him the captaincy, that is very, very astute, because Aberdeen have lacked that experience over the last couple of years. I know they say they've got experienced heads, but they've not got the experience of being winners. And bringing someone like Scott Brown in can be the difference in what happened to Aberdeen last year when they faded away he can re-galvanise them and get them up there. So I think that's a very good addition. And speaking about Aberdeen, they are at home to Dundee United in the league opener on Sunday. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff. Over 6,000 anticipated at Pittodrie, which, considering Aberdeen's attendances, sometimes could be close to a full house. Stephen Glass's first full season, Sean, we've just spoken about it. Scott Brown is the captain, finishing fourth last year. Anything above that, I think, is a massive success for them.
Yep, third will be the aim for them. I think when you're Aberdeen, Hibs or Hearts, your aim kind of has to be third, just considering the size of your club. Obviously, Hearts just coming up, they might take, I think the top 6 will probably be their aim. I'm not sure that they'll get it though. Aberdeen, I think they have to aim for third and maybe sort of try and do something in the cups. I think when you see St Johnstone winning both cups last season, you think, well, Aberdeen with a much bigger budget than that, why are they not making a mark? And they haven't really done. I mean, of course, they got to some finals and were seemingly always comfortably beaten by Celtic in them. But I think a wee cup run, third, and Aberdeen, and if they play good football, I think that's going to be the most important thing. Even if they finish fourth again and fans can see a sort of forward-thinking style on the pitch, I think some would take that. If they can see the project being put in by Stephen Glass and they're confident that it will improve from there. But I think a fourth place finish under Derek McInnes again would have been seen as this sort of like stagnation. So if Glass imposes his ideas and makes himself, shows fans and shows Scottish football that they're there to play good football, then that will make a massive difference to Aberdeen's season.
Before we look at Dundee United, let's take a look at Aberdeen's what is it? Conference League, European Conference League. They renamed it today. They renamed it today. I think it used to be UEFA Conference League or UEFA Euro League 2 or something. They renamed it and then they announced where the final was going to be. It was a strange one, but
it was the UEFA Conference League. Yeah.
I think everybody accepted it was the UEFA Conference League. I think it's now the European Conference League or something like that. I'm not sure. Someone in the comments will let us know. But last night they played Swedish side Häcken over in Sweden, losing 2-0. Goals coming in the 51st and the 65th minute from a penalty before Häcken were reduced to 10 men. Aberdeen go through 5-3 on aggregate. That first leg at Pittodrie was the major difference between them getting through or not.
Aye, and I think Catcher by all accounts they played fantastically that night, and it probably means that they went into the second leg with a wee bit of complacency, just knowing that a 5-1 deficit is very, very unlikely to get overturned. So I think that it was more about Aberdeen just sort of consolidating that. A 2-0 win might be a little bit disappointing. I caught a bit of it on the radio, and I know that Funzo Ojo missed an absolute sitter, just completely missed the ball, which isn't obviously ideal. I think he's trying to rebuild his Aberdeen career, but there's lots of talent in that midfield area, like we spoke about. I mean, the two we said, Brown and Ferguson, and then also Robbie McCrory as well. So
McLennan as well, yeah.
Yeah, Conor McLennan and Dean Campbell has been sort of played quite a bit more since Stephen Glass came in. So I don't think that he might just be a sort of squad player and have scored that goal that could have made a difference. But a good result for Aberdeen. It looked like they were going to play Austria Vienna, which would have been a tough game, but it's an Icelandic outfit they'll be coming up against too. I'm not sure I'm going to...
Oh, come on. I was hoping you were going to have a bash at this, Sean. Right, okay. Breidablik from Iceland are the team that Aberdeen will play in the next round. As you quite rightly said, they knocked out Austria Vienna 3-2 on aggregate. They actually faced Motherwell before in 2010-11, losing 2-0. They lost both legs 1-0, and they're ranked 353rd in Europe. I think this is a fairly good draw for Aberdeen. This is a really good chance for them to get through that tie.
Yeah, I think that's. I think you're spot on. I think Aberdeen should still probably beat Austria Vienna as well, but obviously they've got a bit of name behind them, so that's why you sort of look at that tie and think that's a tougher game. And obviously, they've lost, so it means that this team are pretty decent as well. But I think Aberdeen are fancying themselves, and it'd just be so great to see either Aberdeen or Hibs in group stage European football. St Johnstone as well come into that category, but they are currently in the Europa League. But even if it's a Conference League, some people sort of sniff their roses up at it. But I'd love to see either of those sides play sort of 6 European games. You know you're getting it, and hopefully with sort of more countries open up to the Amber List and all that sort of stuff, we could see some fans getting to go to games, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, AGSC Technology Videos comes in to say Aberdeen should make the Confed fourth round at least. I'm happy to call it Confed. I don't even know what the actual name is because they rebranded it today. Would be good for the coefficient, and if they make the group stage games, yeah, definitely. And I think when you look at it, they've got the experience there. Aberdeen, they always seem to produce a very good result in Europe, although it always seems to be in the second round, and then they lose the easier tie in the third round. So hopefully that isn't the case. I'm not sure if the first leg is at Pittodrie or not. I'll have to double check that. I actually do think it's in Iceland, which I think is better. I think you're better playing away. I know there's no away goals anymore, but you know when you've got back to your own ground, the result you've got to get, although that didn't quite work for Kilmarnock in Europe, did it?
The result we had to get, we won the first leg. All we needed to do was not lose 2 goals to a bunch of part-time players, and we did it. Oh, the good old days, eh?
Speaking of Welsh teams, I saw that TNS were the first Welsh team to win by double figures on aggregate last night. Declan McManus, former Aberdeen striker, is now playing for them. They won 10-1 on aggregate, so maybe we're discrediting Kilmarnock too much there.
I like the new Saints just because they seem to be in the title race with Coruscant Nomads every season, so I'm back there.
So Aberdeen picking up quite a straightforward draw, although Aberdeen fans will hate that if they do go out, so I apologise already in advance. Home to Dundee United on Sunday, 3 p.m. kickoff. Let's talk about Dundee United for a second here. Now, one of the big talking points over Dundee United this summer has been the future of goalkeeper Benjamin Siegrist. Links very early on in the summer to Celtic, although they've seemed to die down. And it's been much anticipated that he will move on, but no bids have been forthcoming. Do you think he'll still be a Dundee United player when the window closes?
I'm not sure if Siegrist's contract's up or not. Is he a free agent just now, or is he?
No, he's still playing. He played in the Premier Sports Cup, I believe.
All right, okay. I'd missed that one. I mean, it's strange that no bids have come in, because he's a fantastic keeper. Only behind Alan McGregor, in my opinion, would be in my team of the season, because I thought that he was the reason that Dundee United were in a relegation battle last season. Just so good. A great shot stopper, and one that I think teams in the Championship and maybe even Celtic in their sort of chase for a reliable goalkeeper should be looking at. Celtic fans might say he's not the quality, but I think he's better than the two you've got.
I think there's definitely Celtic fans out there that would love to sign Benjamin Siegrist.
I think it'd be a very solid signing. Dundee United have signed the goalkeeper in Trevor Carson, who I think is a very good signing as long as he stays fit and healthy. He's struggled with illness, he's struggled with injury, but when he has been fit, he was fantastic for Motherwell. It was clear that he wasn't going to be starting for them when they re-signed Liam Kelly on a 3-year contract, which is just fantastic business from Motherwell. So I think that's a very smart pickup by United. And of course, the only other signing is Charlie Mulgrew. We were really interesting to see him back in.
It's a great signing, that. Great signing.
Yeah, I think it could be a really, really good one. It's a shame that, I mean, even Charlie Mulgrew can't make their home kit look good this season, which is a shame. I think that's quite a damning indictment. But Dundee United are skint at the moment. Everyone knows that. They are going to have to play their academy players, which luckily for them, Dundee United have one of the better academies in the Premiership. So they'll be hoping that can sign them through. Graham Caldwell's in the comments there that he thinks Siegrist is now in the final year of his contract, which is maybe where I've got that from, that United were trying to re-sign him and he said no, he's keen for somewhere away. He has been vocal himself saying that he would like to go somewhere else. It feels like it's time for him to move on. But I fear for Dundee United this season. I think that it will be a lot harder for them. Obviously, a massively inexperienced manager who I hope does well, because he was immediately written off. And I hate when anyone's sort of slagged for getting a job, but just because they're not known. I feel the same about Postecoglou. Just because people hadn't heard the name Tam Coates, they think that he's automatically going to be rubbish. So I'd like him to prove people wrong. And I think that a club as big as Dundee United should be in the Premiership as much as they possibly can. But of course, nobody has a divine right to be in the division, and I think that they could end up being one of the worst sides if these young players aren't quite ready for that step up to regular first team football.
And I think someone that's going to be pivotal to where Dundee United finish off this season is Lawrence Shankland. Someone who hasn't really done it in the Premier League, certainly in his time at Aberdeen, but is known for banging the goals in at the lower leagues. I think it's time that he has to step up and start being that 15, 20 goal striker that Dundee United require. Otherwise, they could be in, as you said, for a pretty poor season. Let's go with predictions then. Aberdeen versus Dundee United at Pittodrie, 3 p.m. kickoff. Sean, how's this one going?
I'll say 2-1 Dons. I think that they should just have too much for United, who I think will struggle this season, like I said. And but I still fancy Shankland or somebody, maybe against his former club, to grab a goal. So I'll say 2-1 Dons.
I'm going to go with the plain old boring 1-0 for Aberdeen. I think they'll do well. Joe Lewis should keep a clean sheet. Thanks to everyone who is getting involved. Bring up your own comments. Brown Warrior coming in to say here 3-1 Aberdeen, and so does Quadbot. Both agreeing they reckon Aberdeen will take the 3 points on Sunday. The other game that's on Sunday is between Motherwell and Hibs at Fir Park. Now, this is one of the most exciting games this weekend, not just because of the football, but because there's away fans. 2,500 away fans at Fir Park. That's what I'm very much excited about, the fact that we're starting to see away fans getting back into the ground. 2,000 away fans, total of 6,500 at Fir Park for this game. This is what we want to see. We want to see fans of all teams getting into the grounds.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that there's going to be fans winding up other fans in the same stadium, it's just going to be a fantastic sight. And I'm massively jealous of my Hibs pals, a couple of them I know who are getting to this game, because getting to go on away day again, they'll get to, I was going to say grab the train, I think there's ScotRail strikes this weekend, but
when is there not ScotRail strikes? Well, like, that's just part and parcel.
To be honest, I can't imagine ScotRail is a good place to be, but they'll get to make that trip however they choose to do so, and I think that to see their team live in another stadium and all that sort of stuff will just be so exciting. So, and two good teams as well. I mean, Motherwell are hard to sort of put a finger on coming into this season, have made some interesting signings, you would say. Hibs you'd expect to get up there again, like we're saying, they could perhaps split the top two. So I think this will be a good game of football. Both teams look to play decent football, and the most important thing is sets of fans winding each other up is what I can't wait to see.
Absolutely. That's fantastic to see. There is another game taking place on Saturday that will have away fans as well, which is the St Johnstone Ross County game, which we'll cover in a moment. But as I said, it's brilliant. It's just brilliant to see fans of both teams getting into the ground. You mentioned there about Motherwell. Now, they had a very disappointing season last year. They've lost Declan Gallagher. Stephen O'Donnell, who you're a big fan of, has now just been appointed club captain. But one of their big problems is up front. They lack the firepower. Guys like Tony Watt just aren't scoring enough goals for them. They brought in Kevin Van Veen, and they've lost Devante Cole, who has signed for Barnsley. I think this means that Motherwell's in trouble this year. Unless they can find someone who is going to score 10, 15 goals and win them games, they are going to be another season in the bottom six. And ahead of this game against Hibs, who have been fairly decent in pre-season, especially that performance over Arsenal and what we've seen in their Confederation Cup game, as we're now calling it, against Santa Coloma. I think Hibs are the favourite for this one, even though 4,000 Motherwell fans will be in attendance at Fir Park.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I would completely agree on your point about the firepower, because Devante Cole wasn't massively prolific, but when he was moved to the centre forward role from out wide, he did make a big difference and scored some goals last season. I think that Devante Cole and Tony Watt was one of the most prolific partnerships in terms of goals and assists between each other in the Premiership last season. So the fact that that's lost will obviously be a big loss to Motherwell. And we don't know much about Kevin Van Veen. He just strikes me as one of those, you just get the feeling he's either going to be absolutely class or absolutely terrible. There's not going to be no middle ground. He's not just going to get 7 or 8 goals. It's going to be none or sort of 15, 16. So I think that's one to keep an eye. I really like the signing of Connor Shields, who had a great season at Queen of the South and was a player who a lot of Premiership clubs were meant to be keeping an eye on if Killie had stayed in the Premiership, I think they might have tried to make a move for him. But I think that has it?
So,
I don't know.
I don't know. Just Frank Brennan's comment there saying, have Motherwell actually got 4,000 fans? Good question. Any Motherwell fans watching, let us know. Have a go at Frank as well, if you want.
But so Connor Shields is one who I think he could be the answer to that, but it depends how he copes with the step up to Premiership football. So I agree with you. I think Motherwell are going to be one of those sides. To me, there's kind of a top 7 and a bottom 5 maybe, and I think that Motherwell is certainly in the latter of those.
Let's speak about Hibs then. And Hibs are another one of these teams where we will have clips from the pre-match conference here on a Friday on the state of Scottish football. Unfortunately, we don't have them this week, but we will be up and running next week. Our producer Paul's promised me that will be the case, so we look forward to bringing you clips from Jack Ross's press conference. But I think the biggest thing for Hibs this season will be keeping a hold of the talents that they developed last year. And I'm thinking in particular, Kevin Nisbet and Josh Doig are two who are attracting quite a lot of interest. We speak here, can Aberdeen or Hibs come between Celtic and Rangers in the top 3? I think if Hibs have any chance of doing that, it has to be when they keep Kevin Nisbet and Josh Doig at that club.
I'd completely agree with you. Yeah, I think that Kevin Nisbet is only going to get better the more games that he plays, and he since a rubbish spell at Partick Thistle, he's just scored goals wherever he's been and up the divisions. Scored loads of goals in League One, so got to move to the Championship. Scored loads of goals in the Championship, got to move to the Premiership, and he scored loads of goals in the Premiership last season. This is a Celtic podcast, right? But why is Kevin Nisbet not more linked to Celtic if Edward leaves? Because a player of his quality, the amount of goals he scored at that Hibs team, the amount of chances he would get for a team like Celtic, do you not think that he could be the answer to being a sort of 20, 25 goal striker?
I would sign him. I wouldn't say he would be the top striker. I wouldn't say he's the guy that you turn to, especially if you've got any ambitions of doing anything, even in the Europa League or the Conference League. I wouldn't think he'd be the guy you turn to. But I do think he'd be an astute signing that would be in the ilk of someone like Scott McDonald and could get the 20 goals a season for not that much of an outlay.
I think that's smart. I think that in the Premiership, Kevin Nisbet will continue to score goals, and because he's made that step up every single time, if he was to get a move to the Championship, of course, he was linked to Birmingham City, and he was, by all accounts, pretty keen for that move to go through. It didn't, because Birmingham didn't meet their evaluation, which fair play to Hibs. That's what we should be doing for these talented players at our Scottish clubs, especially ones that are Scottish internationals themselves. So fair play to them. But like I said, I like the signings that Hibs have made. Daniel kind of thinks a good one. And Jake Doyle-Hayes as well was a player I was massively impressed with at St Mirren. I thought whoever makes a move for him, I thought it'd probably be back down south, considering that he was previously with Aston Villa. I thought he'd maybe moved in there, but the fact Hibs have got him, an extremely talented young midfielder who I think improves them in that central area. Then you've got Gogic, Newell, and Jake Doyle-Hayes. I think that could make a really, really good midfield trio, and one that could carry Hibs to great heights and maybe even knocking Celtic off that second spot.
Let's hope not. Hibs obviously get no. I just enough. Let's speak about Hibs' Conference League win last night, a 2-1 win over Santa Coloma. Coming back from 1-0 down, as you mentioned there, Murphy and Mackay scoring the goals for them. They have drawn against a team that is familiar to fans of Aberdeen, and it is Rijeka of Croatia. They finished third in Croatia last year. They made the Europa League group stages, although they finished bottom, and they've played Aberdeen twice in the last 5 years. Aberdeen beat them in 2015, and then they were beat in 2019. Of all the ties that Hibs could have got, this is going to be the one that is the most difficult. And if they don't get past that, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, like you said, it's a tough game, and Hibs will have to be at their best to get through that one. Like I said, when people are turning their nose up at this Conference League, there's good teams in it. A team who was in the group stage of the Europa League last season, and some sort of fairly high-profile Champions League level clubs. I mean, Tottenham Hotspur will drop into it at some point fairly soon, and I think that it sort of speaks volumes of the fact that there will be good teams in this league. So as much as I would love to see, like I said, I would really want to see one of these teams, or hopefully both of these teams, make it all the way to the group stage so they can experience that, and not just the fans of their own clubs can experience it, but us as Scottish football fans can experience seeing those teams in a group stage of European football. But Hibs will have to be on top form and take their chances when they get them in that one. But they can do that with players like Kevin Nisbet and Martin Boyle. There's a lot of quality in that Hibs team. I do still worry about them a little bit defensively. Paul Hanlon and Ryan Porteous, and their Paul McGinn as well plays sometimes at part of a back three. I think that Porteous's sort of character, he can be a bit sort of hot-headed, and Paul Hanlon, his pace, will that be covered this season? So I do worry about Hibs defensively, but take their chances, and they've got every chance in this game.
Let's get a prediction for the game at Fir Park. It's a 4:30 kickoff on Sunday, Motherwell versus Hibs. I'm going to go with 2-1 Hibs. I think they might just sneak it.
I'm saying 1-0 Hibs.
1-0 Hibs. Both victories for the High Bees on Sunday. Now let's do the typical sports scene thing and cover the last two games very briefly because we've got 10 minutes left before we have to wrap up. We could talk about this for a lot longer. Everyone's excited about the Premier League season starting back. Let's look at the team who are recently promoted and go to Dens Park for Dundee versus St Mirren, 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday. That's what you want to hear. A 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday. That is Scottish football. Obviously, knocking your Kilmarnock side out, 4,000 at Dens Park. And when you look at it and you look at that team, Jason Cummins and Charlie Adam, they have to be the key men for Dundee this year. Otherwise, I think they're another team that will struggle.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people talking about Jason Cummins, but he actually didn't feature much in that run-in, and he'll need to step up to get into that team, because I didn't know too much about Dundee in the second half of last season. I saw them play against Boyring Rose in the Scottish Cup, where Dundee narrowly squeezed through in that game. It was a great performance from Boyring that night, taking them to extra time. And then, of course, I saw them in the Premiership playoff games, and I thought Jason Cummins would be one of those, in the big occasion as well. I was scared about Cummins. He didn't even make it off the bench in either game, and I saw a clip after it where he was stood up on the table and wherever they were celebrating afterwards, saying, "Oh, the gaffer said he was bringing me in to be a big game player. It's the 2 biggest game of the season. I'm stuck on the bench," like just sort of having a laugh about it. And he'll need to step up. They've signed another striker as well, who we both know, Killian Sheridan. Who's been,
fantastic patter.
I mean, I love him. I didn't know he's still being taken. I didn't think a Premiership club would have him back, but he's there, and I'll be interested to see how he does. I'd like to see him do well. He's a good character. Saw him score a hat-trick once at Tynecastle, so that was awfully nice. Dundee, I think, might do better than people expect. I mean, Paul McMullen was a great signing for them last season, jumping over the street from Dundee United. He's permanently with the D now. I think he made a massive difference, a really direct player. And I know that my co-editor at Energy Sport really liked Luke McCowan, who was at Ayr United, and he's jumped over to Dens as well. So I think that James McPeak in the second half of last season had a good thing going with this Dundee side. And I think he's just made a few additions in areas that he could sort of improve. Of course, Charlie Adam can stroll it in any game. I still think he's probably one of the most talented players in the league, despite the fact of his age. So I think Dundee might just shock some people and actually have a fairly decent season. But of course, I would still group them in that sort of bottom category of the table.
Another team that could probably be down there is a team that they are facing at St Mirren. Obviously, speculation at the minute over Jamie McGrath and Conor McCarthy. Speculation that I think it's Rotherham and is it Huddersfield as well that are also in for the players.
That's right.
Bids of around 300,000 and 100,000 for McCarthy. But they're a team that look as if they're going to lack firepower. I know they've got Eamon Brophy up front, but it was an interesting one actually looking up Brophy's stats. He's not scored since November. So it used to be a case of feed the wolf and he'll score, but that's just not happening anymore.
I mean, Eamon Brophy was never actually massively prolific. His best goal scoring season was the season that Kelly finished third, and he got 11 goals. So not sort of crazy numbers, and he takes penalties as well. So you're not looking at anything sort of astronomical there. Eamon Brophy shoots a lot is the thing. His shot volume is the most in the Premiership by some way. And he'll shoot from ridiculous angles, and sometimes that pays off. You might get a weird ricochet. But Eamon Brophy needs to sort of make a mark at St Mirren, otherwise you kind of wonder where his career will go from there, considering that it was petering out at Kilmarnock, and a lot of eyebrows were raised when he made that move. But Killie fans said at the time and would say now that he wasn't really the player that they hoped that he would be. So him tailing off there. They've signed Curtis Main, who is one of those players who sticks around in the Scottish Premiership no matter what, and has had decent spells, but I'm not sure if he's a prolific striker himself. But when you say that St Mirren are in that sort of bottom group, I disagree with you. I don't think St Mirren are going to be fighting relegation this season. I see them as one of those teams. I would tip them for top 6 before I would Hearts, and that might depend on whether they keep the likes of Jamie McGrath and Conor McCarthy, like you said. But the fact they got Scott Tanser to come from St Johnstone to St Mirren was a massive shock to me. I couldn't believe that because, of course, the success they've had. That's their starting left back going from St Johnstone to St Mirren. So I think that says a lot about their ambitions. And maybe I'm rating St Mirren because they've turned a little bit into a Kilmarnock B-side, considering they've taken both Greg Kiltie and Alan Power from the relegated Ayrshire side. But I think that Alan Power is one of our better players in a pretty rubbish season, not saying much. And Greg Kiltie has the potential to be a very exciting Premiership player on his day. He needs to find the consistency that he had when he was a youngster. And I think Jim Goodwin's a really good manager. He's shown that at his time as Alloa. He's shown that in the way that he got St Mirren. They've improved year on year since he came in. Of course, it was a season of nearly last season for the Buddies, 2 cup semi-finals, and they missed out on the top 6 for the first time in their history with an 89th-minute equaliser on the last day before the split. So I think that the key for St Mirren will be that top 6 aim to finally do it for the first time in their history.
I've got to say, I was delighted when Kilmarnock went down for one reason. It was the fact that Gary Dicker and Alan Power wouldn't be in the Premier League this season. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case because I think they kick players more than they kick footballs, to be perfectly honest. But I'll be convinced otherwise if he has a good season at St Mirren. Well, prediction time. I think I'm going to sit on the fence for this one. I think it was good to see Dundee back in the league, but I'm going for a 1-1 draw.
See, I quite like both these teams coming into the season. I've said that St Mirren are going to finish top 6, and if they're going to do that, they probably need to win games like Dundee away. So I'm going to back them, and I'm going to say it'll be 3-1 Buddies. I don't know where the 3 goals are coming from, but I'm saying 3-1 Buddies.
3-1 St Mirren. Let's get to the last game of the 6.
We've got a St Mirren fan in the comments there. We should probably bring his.
Oh, where are we?
Oh, I can do it as well. I can.
Yeah, well done, Sean.
Graham there saying Power looks class. Sean experience pro. Kiltie will fill the void if McGrath leaves. That's very true. We have a couple of talented youngsters coming through, and Henderson and Reid. I liked Henderson in the Scottish Cup quarter final against Killie last season, and Dylan Reid was the player who had to stop being included in the squad so he could finish his Nat 5. So it just made even me feel old. So hopefully has no exam disruptions this year, and we can make his mark on that side.
Nat 5s weren't even a thing when I was in school. That's how old I'm feeling. Let's look at the last game of the weekend, or probably the last game that will be on Sports Scene anyway. Ross County, St Johnstone. St Johnstone, the double cup winners from last year, looking ahead to their big European tie against Galatasaray, which we'll be covering here on the State of Scottish Football. But again, another game where both home and away fans will be there. Roughly about 1,000 St Johnstone away fans there for the opening day of the season. Now, Ross County now managed by disgraced former Scotland star. Look, let's not even touch on that. Let's just touch on the additions that they've managed to bring in. Dominic Samuel, former Blackburn, and who else was he at last season? Championship and League One striker. A great addition to the squad. And Ross Callaghan from Hamilton as well. They are certainly adding to the team, whereas St Johnstone haven't added anyone permanently yet. that could be a tricky one for the Sainties when they go up to Dingwall. Very difficult place to go. And when you've not got the reinforcements in, you're relying on the form of the players from last season.
Yeah, and because there's interest in some of those players, are their heads fully in the game? I hope they are. They seem like the type of characters who would be, and Callum Davidson's obviously made a great team there. I would expect Saints to finish in the top 6 again, providing that they do keep a hold of the players that they have. Of course, Jamie McCart looks like he could be heading to Hibs, which I think would be a really good signing, considering I just spoke about Hibs' defensive worries, and Rotherham were keen to get a deal done for Sean Rooney, but they wanted the deal done this week. Haven't heard any more about it, so that would maybe mean that he's set to stay put for the moment. Ross County, I don't like at all this season. They had the worst defence in the Premiership last season. I don't see how they've improved that. Jack Donnelly, who supports some irrelevant football club, saying there that County losing a fair few bodies, though Saints have done well to keep the majority of their squad so far. Yeah, I think that they haven't improved in a defensive sense. County, like I said, worst in the league. And Samuel, maybe Callahan could add a little bit more firepower. But again, I don't see them having improved massively in an offensive sense either. So I think if I was to predict a team to come bottom of the Scottish Premiership, I think it'd be Ross County, and I'd be quite happy with it considering the appointment they made.
Yes, the appointment of Malky Mackay, which we covered on the Football Insomniac previously, so we'll leave it at that. So let's get in there because we are running out of time now. Predictions for this game up at the Victoria Stadium. I'm going to go with 1-1 between Ross County and St Johnstone.
3-0 Saints.
3-0 Sainties. That is the opening card in the Cinch Premier League this season. If you're going to a game, then do enjoy it. I'm absolutely jealous of anyone that is getting to go. But Sean, before we wrap up, it is the first Ayrshire derby in 4 years. Ayr United versus Kilmarnock in the opening day of the Cinch Championship. How's it going to go?
2-0 Kelly. Nothing too embarrassing for the wee guys. You don't want to show them up too much on the opening day. But I'm saying a comfortable, nice, easy opening day victory for Kilmarnock, which I've just learned earlier on that I'll be at for Energy Sports. So I'm very excited to be at Rugby Park for the Ayrshire derby. So I can't wait for that one.
Well, just remember that you're balanced as a reporter. No, I knew you wouldn't be. As always. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on this opening week of the State of Scottish Football podcast. If you have enjoyed it, please let your friends know. We will be covering Scottish football for the entire season. There is a fantastic young team of contributors pulled together. Again, on a Friday, it will be myself and Sean, and we'll fight and we'll bicker, and at the end of the day, we'll go for a pint. That's exactly what Scottish football is all about. Thank you very much for joining us. Subscribe to A State of Mind to be included for the chance to win a platinum disc of the Verbs Urban Hymns. That competition finishes tomorrow at midnight. Until then, enjoy your football, enjoy Scottish football, and the State of Scottish Football will be back on Monday at 6 p.m. Enjoy.